I want you to remember when you were called by the Lord, when you were first called by the Lord. Can you recall that time in your life? You remember when you first heard the Lord's voice? All right, you remember where you were at when you first started hearing him call to you? Do you remember? It's hard sometimes. Last night for Vespers, we were going over Samuel, where Samuel's in his bed. Do you guys remember this incident? Samuel's in his bed, and he's a young man. He's just being called as a priest. And he hears the Lord call him, and he keeps going to Eli. Hey, are you calling me? Eli goes, go back to bed, Samuel. And he goes back to bed, and he comes back. He hears the voice of the Lord. He goes back to Eli again. Did you call me, Master? No, go back to bed, Samuel. I don't know what's wrong with you. It took him 3 times. And Eli said, this time ask, who are you, when you hear a voice. Okay, so Samuel said, okay, who are you? And the Lord said, here, it's me. And Samuel, it says, we're told that he had before then not heard the voice of the Lord. So he didn't know it. He didn't know how to recognize it, see? So, but do you remember the time that you began to recognize the voice of the Lord? Do you guys remember that moment? Think about that. Keep that in your mind, okay? Maybe you were baptized Catholic and later on you had kind of a renewal of your faith. And you can remember that renewal moment. But there's a time. If there hasn't been a time for you, then we'll pray that you'd have that time. But you can remember when you started hearing the voice of God, and that will stick out to you. If you haven't had it, pray for it, and one day, I promise, it will stick out to you. And, well, the early church, it started with the voice of the Lord being incredibly clear. Jesus, we heard in the gospel message, Jesus is calling his disciples, the fishermen, and he says, come follow me. And they drop their nets and they just follow Jesus. And for 3.5 years, the Lord stays with them and teaches them. Oftentimes in Christianity, you might think that we're just all about the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. Now there's big salvific events, but remember, he stayed for 3.5 years. Because people needed to know what God was like. They needed to be clear about who God is. And so he stayed with them for 3.5 years. And for that 3.5 years, the apostles, they devoted themselves to the teaching of God. And then after the Lord raised from the dead, they gave themselves completely to the preaching of the Word of God. And to the teaching, right? And the early Christian community was so sure about their faith that we're told in Acts chapter 2 that they sold their goods and they lived together with the same goods as one another. So it was this kind of communal society. Was it forced? They didn't have to do that. But they decided to do that. They decided to do that for a reason. It wasn't because equality of goods is what God's calling us to. That's not why they did that. They did that because they were so centered on the gospel call of Jesus Christ that they understood that nothing else really mattered in life. They understood that alone was what mattered. I can tell you that was the biggest argument that came to my mind when I decided to give my life to the Lord. That is, I wanted to give everything in my future life to his ministry, was that question that just arose in my head. Well, if you just experience God and God created the world, then what matters more to you than just giving your life to ministry? I mean, what else would you really want to do with your time? So for me, that was the big transition. But in the early church, no one thought, well, maybe I'm called to be a bishop. No one thought, well, maybe I'm called to be a priest. No one thought like that. They thought, I've been called for the gospel of Jesus Christ, to make Jesus known to others in the same way that I know the Lord. And that's all that mattered to them. They didn't care about if you get some kind of, you get to be a priest, no one cared. No one thought about that. That wasn't even on the radar. I mean, if you remember that the diaconate wasn't even formed until some time into the ministry of the apostles. They weren't thinking like that. Everybody was so convinced that this Jesus whom they had walked with, or perhaps this Jesus whom they just experienced this gift of prophecy from, or this gift of tongues, or these spiritual gifts at Acts chapter 2. This Jesus whom they seem to be encountering every day by giving them their lives over, deciding to struggle against sin, deciding to live for a different life, different world, a different kingdom. This Jesus is all that mattered to the people. And so for that reason, the people, they sowed with great bounty. They gave everything to the Lord. They sowed even their gifts, their financial gifts away so that they could be in harmony with one another, so that they could accomplish the goal of the gospel. And that's an exciting time, isn't it? That's an exciting time where the gospel becomes the central point of our life, because it really gives meaning to our life. So what's happened? Right? When we had our conversation about finances, and this is just one thing among many, because this is really a bigger issue. Finances is just a small part of a bigger issue. What happened where we stopped tithing, and we don't tithe that much as a church. Only 2/3 of our members, and I'm not talking to non-members here. Maybe I am at your own parish. Think about it. But only 2/3 of our parishioners gave to the bishop's appeal. Okay? Our tithing's not that great. We're definitely in the red every month. So what happened along the way? What I have to think, right, as the pastor of the parish, what's going on? Well, I think it's a part of a much bigger problem we're facing in contemporary society. And what I want to say is this, that we're no longer like the early Christians, in that we're no longer convinced that Jesus Christ and his gospel is the thing that we're supposed to live for. That's the only answer. Can you think of an alternative answer? I can't think of an alternative answer. The only alternative I can think of is maybe you think, well, this church isn't worth investing my money into because they're not living the gospel. I mean, if I had $1 billion, okay, if I had $1 million, that's okay. If I had $1 million, I would be very careful with which ministries I invest my money in. You know that? I would. I might not even give to our church at sometimes. I would think about that. You know, if you're a member of the parish, you have to tithe to your parish. But what I'm saying is, maybe that's it. Maybe you're thinking there's better ministries, there's better things that are going on for the kingdom. Okay, and that's a different. I'm not talking to you so much right now. I'm talking more about the cultural context that we're faced in. That's creating an environment where we don't give of our time, talent, and treasure to the Lord. Right? Like one of the things that was brought up in the meeting the other day, and this is what really got my mind kickstart, right? It was like a kickstart to my mind. Here it goes. Here's what's happening. Someone said, well, they can figure out how to pay for their kids' entertainment. They can get them into sports, right? Okay, now that's the beginning of it, right? Okay, so here's the thing. That's true. We have enough money to do the things that we think matter. And these aren't like electricity and water for the house type things, right? This is like sports for the kids type things. Like this is entertainment for our family type things. So if we have money for that, how do we not have money for tithing, right? It's like people find a way to entertain themselves. We find a way to entertain ourselves. So how do we not have money for tithing? Well, that's an incredible thing, because what it definitely says, without a shadow of doubt, what it definitely says is God is less important in our lives than these things. And you can name the thing. Is it food? Pick my worst struggle first. Is it the internet? Is it cable? Is it movies? Is it sports? Is it video games? Is it clothing? Is it what is the thing? What is the thing that I put before giving to God? And well, if I can name the thing, then I can name the idol. So that's kind of helpful to know, right? If you can name the thing, you can name the idol. So there you go. Figure out what your idols are, because if you don't tithe, then you have an idol. And now you know what it is. You're welcome. I've identified your idol for you. So, but why does that idol matter so much to me? And well, that's a different question, I think. And I think that we have to ask about our faith at that point. We have to ask about our faith. Why does that idol matter so much to me? Because what it implies is that our faith is stale. You know, because if you have active and living faith, then you're going to want to be like the early Christians. You're going to want to give your life over to the Lord. I think here's what's happening. If I could put it like this, I think that we are facing the spirit of delusion, of a spirit that's talked about in the book of Thessalonians. A lot of times it says God will send out a deluding spirit to delude the minds of those who don't believe so that they will consistently not believe. In other words, we're going through a period of darkness in history, I think, unlike any other. And I know a lot of people have said that in history, but I think that there's some things that I can point out that are different than other times in history that imply that we're being deluded. Okay, so let me just take you through a few things. One of my favorite analogies is the boiling frog. You guys know the boiling frog analogy? Yeah, if you put a frog in tepid water and then turn up the heat and slowly boil it, it won't jump out, and you'll boil it. Yeah? But if you throw a frog in when it's boiling, he'll jump out. So what's going on, I believe, brothers and sisters, is that we are being put through this slow boiling process. And so here's a couple ways that I want to point out that we're being put through this slow boiling process, which is affecting our belief in God, which is affecting our willingness to give to God. And I mean by that, our time, talent, and treasure. Our waking up in the morning and saying, Lord, let me know you today. That, or the thing that keeps us before we go to bed from saying, thank you, Lord, for everything you gave to me. Sorry for the ways that I blew it today. I'm going to work on tomorrow. The thing that keeps us from that, from giving our every moment to the Lord, well, it's the spirit of the delusion of this age. So, first of all, he's attacking our families. I don't know of a period in history, maybe you can help me, maybe you can show me that I'm wrong. I don't know of a period in history where so many women are not permitted to stay at home with their children if they want to. Women have to work now. They cannot stay home. Most of them. If you're blessed if you can, most of them can't. I don't know of a time in history when that was the case. This, to me, implies our culture is falling to bits. But it also implies something else. The normal household, the way it's functioned since we were running around banging each other with sticks, is being destroyed. Because if you don't have children raised by mom and dad, with the mom having her role and the dad having his role, statistically there's a good chance that things are going to go wrong. The second way that our culture is being attacked outside of the obvious, I'm just not even going to go into the weird obvious stuff where people think they're cats and things like that. Okay, the second obvious way that our culture is being attacked is by the destruction of the personhood of men. Men are made to feel like they should feel bad for being men, which is a very strange thing, right? We were watching a commercial the other day, and it was a commercial, and this woman had it all together, and then the man was like laying on her like a woman with his legs all crossed up, but like it looked very effeminate to me, and my wife was the one who had the reaction like, ew, why does that man look like that? And then she was like fixing the house, and not that I'm good at fixing houses, but she was fixing the house, and it was like the man was like, who needs men, right? Who needs men? Have you seen those videos where they go around, they interview men, and they go, do you need women? And all the men go, yeah, we need women. And they go to women, they go, do you need men? They go, no, we don't need men. And it's like, this is a cultural phenomenon. So it's bad to be a man. But did you know that statistically you are better off growing up with a father and without a mother than you are growing up with a mother and not a father? Did you know that statistically? If so, in other words, if you come into this world and your father is there for you, but you don't have a mom, did you know you're better off in the future than if you come into the world and only have a mother and do not have a father? I'm not trying to denigrate motherhood, okay? Listen, motherhood, that's the one that everyone is elevating. You already know the importance of motherhood. I'm trying to say that's really weird that our society is so against men and that it's so trying to force women away from their children. That's a weird thing because never in history has that ever happened. Think about that. Never in history. I don't know a time. I'm a student of history. I don't know a time. So that's kind of weird, right? The family unit is being attacked in a way that it never has. And so that creates an instability of mind. Like, do conservative thinkers have it all backwards? Maybe because like society's saying, yeah, they have it all backwards. And if you believe like the Bible does, it actually does have a very clear unity of family, then you must be a strange person who's just not caught up with the time. But I call that the spirit of the age, the spirit that now works in the sons of disobedience. You know, another way that we're hearing now, even within the Catholic Church, that there are multiple paths to God, that you can go any direction you want and find your way to God. Well, that's pretty freaking strange. That's never been taught in history either. That's a new one. I thought Jesus Christ was the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I thought that was the passage I was supposed to live, but now I'm being told that all religions are equal paths to God. Well, that's a really strange thing because I didn't think that was true. And then to make it even more confusing, I don't hear many bishops and priests getting up and saying, yeah, that ain't right. Well, that's even more confusing because now it's challenging my faith. So now it's not just my family that's being attacked, but it's also my faith. And this is the first time in history when that has ever happened. First time in history that either of those two things have ever happened. First time in history that our minds are never given a moment of rest. Try to find rest for your mind. I was telling the catechists today, right? The catechumens today, like, we gotta have a moment of rest, but we can't seem to find it, and our mind wants to be entertained, and usually, throughout most of history, boredom, it creates this desire within us to not be bored. And then what happens is we get creative and we start accomplishing things and we start processing life and moving along. And now if you get bored, you can literally, for the first time in history, go, not bored. Right? And then, I'm bored of that now. Give me a little bit more. We can literally, first time in history, be entertained at all times, in all places, and never have to think. I don't have to think. I don't have to be alone. I don't have to be bored. The entertainment is so much better than Father Nathan's preaching. It goes on forever. Do you realize if I preached for an hour, you guys would kill me? But I promise you, you can go home today, I probably will too, and watch an episode of something for an hour and not even notice that a moment stopped. In fact, you'll be likely inclined to push next episode. You will never tell me, Father, next sermon, keep bringing them. You'll never do it. You'll never do it. Okay? So, your brain is being attacked. Your family is being attacked. Your religion is being attacked. Let me go back to family again. People are working like 60 hours a week now. That's insane. How can you work 60 hours a week and expect any quality time with God? That's not fair. Do you know most societies look at American society and go, that's a bad quality of life? I mean, those who actually know it. I'm not talking about poor people who are trying to, get out of poverty. I'm talking about people who have decent lives. They look at American society and go, you guys work way too much. Way too much. You have to have time to pray. So you're being attacked at every possible angle. You're being attacked at every possible angle. I'm so privileged as a priest because it's my job to study theology and to pray. But for you, I'm so sorry. This is impossible, the task that's been placed before you. You're being attacked in every angle possible. I was hiking a few months back, and a hailstorm came, and it was a pretty good one. The stones, they actually hurt. So we were running. It was kind of fun, to be honest. But we were covering our faces and hiding behind bushes, and but we had to keep going because we wanted to get out of the hailstorm. But the reality is, we had to cover our eyes to some extent, and so it was a little bit blurry what was in front of us. And, we're getting hit with these little pebbles all over our arms, and it kind of hurt. So we're just kind of trying to make sure that we make it to the car at some point here. And so we got to keep going. We don't have a choice. We can't just stop, right? Life doesn't just stop. It just keeps coming at you with a barrage of hail thingies. Okay, so what do? You keep going, right? But here's the thing. We knew that we were in a hailstorm. And so because we knew it, we knew that we just had to keep going. We knew it's a hailstorm. I expect to get hit. I expect this to hurt a little bit. I expect to not see clearly. But the problem with us is we don't realize that's what's happened to us. So we don't realize that we're being barraged at every angle. We're mostly blind to what's in front of us. And the only way that we're going to come out of this thing at the end is if we see our goal very clearly. And our goal is Jesus Christ. And everything in this world is trying to distract us from Jesus Christ. I'll tell you just one personal sin so that you'll understand how hard this is. I want to live my life for Jesus. I really do. But every time I start to really try to live my life for Jesus, I have this same, I just discovered this one, so I'll have to bring it to a spiritual father. I have the same little inclination. Maybe you're just an extremist. The same thought. Maybe you're just extreme. Lighten up. Just lighten up a little bit. Just don't push yourself so much. Be nice to yourself. And then if I give in, then what happens is it takes me a bunch of time to get back to the place where I want to live my life completely for Jesus. But if I just pray when I don't feel like it, I can overcome the inclination to think about myself as an extremist, and I can keep going. See, you're overcome with so many obstacles in your life, and then you also have to deal with you to boot. You have to figure out what in you is the thing that you repetitively go to draw yourself away from wholeheartedly following Christ. What is it in you that keeps pulling you back to that lackadaisical, unbelieving attitude. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.